had compassion on these people, as opposed to typically when you would come, and this kind of refers to what my dad was saying, to even sometimes touch some of them people that had infirmities, then made you unclean. So by Jesus Christ coming to Jerusalem to have the feast of the Jews, whichever it was, and then maybe, I don't know if he would have went to the tabernacle first, and then he came to the sick, to those that needed him more than actually going to the temple and worshiping. I think it shows that Jesus Christ had power over worship. He had power not only over worship, but he didn't have to necessarily go to the Feast of the Jews, but the fact that he realized that these people here needed him more than he needed the feast. And he shows that he had compassion on them. It also shows the innermost workings of Jesus Christ, where he wants to help those that are hurting. He wants to help those that have infirmities. He wants to heal them. And so that kind of leads us into the next portion here, as far as the angel. Is it actually a physical angel that they would have seen? So I was reading a couple commentaries, and it's so broad. Okay, so I'll just kind of give you the range. It was said that it could have just been minerals in the water that at certain periods of time that it would blurp, and then that was the moving of the water. And then if people got into there quickly enough, it was enough minerals and stuff that would have healed them from some of their maladies. And so it was only good for a certain amount of time. There was others that said that it was a man that actually went in there and stirred the waters up, and then you could actually get in there and be healed. And then there's the angel. How prevalent was angels? Well, you make the decision. I don't really know. It doesn't really, to me, as you read this here and as you look at John, he doesn't really say that it was an angel, but it does say an angel went down a certain season. So it was during a certain period of time. It almost seems like it was regular, because otherwise these people what purpose would have they had been to be there? If people were not being healed, they wouldn't be there normally. So that's neither here nor there, but it's just something to think about, that Jesus Christ was able to go to this place where he knew that physically disabled people were. The healing of the people, that's not the point of this lesson. The point of this lesson is a certain man that was there. He was having an infirmity, as already mentioned, for 38 years. He was stuck in this place, this hospital, and it doesn't really say that there was caretakers, but it almost would have had to been. It was essentially a hospital. Let me see if I can find it here. I think it's so this pool that is this here. I didn't realize this thing was this big. So it is if it's as big as what they say, it's 360 feet long, 130 feet wide, and 75 feet deep. That's a big pool. That is a lot of water. Now today, they think they have found close to where it is, just based on geography. And right now there's just a little trickle of water coming in on the one side. Where did all the water go? I don't know. With the destruction of Jerusalem, they rendered some of them things. They destroyed a lot of them things. So we don't really know, but that is a big pool for a man-made pool. That much water, obviously they would be 75 feet deep. There would have been places where it would have been shallow, where they could have had a place where they could got in.
Yeah, I don't think the water was 75 feet deep. It was 75 feet in the ground.
Okay, I don't know.
I think.
Okay, like, so basically it was recessed. And so the pool wasn't actually 75 feet deep. It was just and I didn't look at that part. So I really wasn't too focused on that, but just thinking of how long it is and how wide it is in the city, surrounded by these porches so basically it goes to show you that as you think about John and what he said about the angel, and you think about the healing that people did get, it shows you that it was common. It shows you that they had people there that were getting healed regularly. Whether it was, and like I said, whether it was the minerals in the water, whether it was an actual angel. I personally think it was an actual angel that showed that God was there, that showed that God does heal. He does have a way for people who have sicknesses to come to him.
Back in the early 70s, when I was over in Jamaica, Brother Mike Osborne, we went to a mineral bath, and I had warts all over my hand. And when I got home from Jamaica, every wart was gone. So I thought it must have been something in that mineral water that did it, but that's not a comparison to this, but it just reminded me of when I read this.
Yeah, thank you. So there is minerals and stuff they do wonders. But that's I want to move on. So let me look at my notes here. I had a couple references here.
What especially comes to my mind is Jesus healed one person. Why didn't he heal the whole group? Another thing that I don't know, I remember reading about this years ago. It seemed like, didn't they use this water for the washing in the temple? The water would have been pumped up to the temple. I was thinking, I don't know if it was this pool or if it was another one that wasn't that far from the temple that was used for washing within the temple worship. I don't know if this was it or not.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've seen that somewhere, and I'm just looking through here to see. But yeah, the Kent says that is correct.
Yeah.
So it would have been that cleansing water that would have been there. So this portion of scripture here, as you look here, someone want to get me Isaiah, and we're getting to here to where Jesus Isaiah 35 verse 5 and 6. Someone want to get and read for me. Go ahead and read 35 1 through 6. I want the whole context there. As we get into this next portion where Jesus Christ takes this man and he heals a man who has been sick, who has not been able to walk for 38 years, everyone that was around him realized that this man could not walk. You wouldn't be faking a sickness for 38 years, would you? No, it's not even possible. What would be the purpose of that? So this is a portrayal of a prophecy that Isaiah here gives, and someone have that. They want to read that, please. Isaiah 35, 1 to 6.
35, 1 to 6. The wilderness and the solitary place shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as a rose. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice even with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given unto it, the excellency of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of the Lord and the excellency of our God. Strengthen ye the weak hands and firm the feeble knees. Say to them that are of a fearful heart, be strong, fear not. Behold, your God will come with vengeance, even God with a recompense. He will come and save you. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. Then shall the lame man leap as an hart, and the tongue of the dumb sing. For in the wilderness shall waters break out, and streams in the desert.
So Isaiah there is portraying someone who's going to come and heal the sick, make the blind to see, make the lame to walk. And that is this John takes this passage here of this healing of this on the Sabbath here, and he directly relates it to there in Isaiah. It's an important note that he just, obviously, this man, it impressed on his mind that this has happened in Isaiah. Isaiah prophesied about this, and this is actually coming to pass. And that's why I think it's why he takes this passage and he writes it about it in depth. The question is then, this would have been on the Sabbath when Jesus was supposed to be in the temple. He went here to the hospital. He healed this man. He gives him he didn't touch him. And there's something else in this here passage that I'm just going to read here a little bit. Let me see. Verse 6. When Jesus saw him lie and knew that he had been now a long time in that case, 38 years for that matter, he said unto him, Wilt thou be made whole? The impotent man answered him, Sir, I have no man when the water is troubled to put me into the pool, but while I am coming, another steppeth down before me. Jesus said unto him, Rise, take up thy bed and walk. What happened last week? Last week's lesson? How was that young man healed?
Faith.
Faith. Okay, so this week, how was this man healed? Did he have faith in Jesus Christ?
You would have had to.
It's interesting that when they asked him, who was it? He said, well, the same one that made me whole said, take my bed and walk, and says he was not who he was.
Mm-hmm. So I would beg to you, do you think he had faith in Jesus Christ when he didn't know who he was?
I think he did. He knew who Jesus was, but he didn't see. He knew of him, but he didn't know him.
Are you sure? But think about it like this. I thought about this. I don't think he did. And there's a reason why. So if he was in a hospital who is totally shut out from a lot of people around him, where there's only the nurses and doctors, this would have been this would have been possibly the first year of Jesus's, where this is the beginning of his ministry. So Jesus's ministry wouldn't have been portrayed out very much yet. The multitudes weren't gathering around him too much yet. I don't think he knew who Jesus was. I don't think he had any inkling that the Son of God was there right in front of him. And what I'm getting at is he didn't have any faith at all that this was the Son of God, that he could save him, that he could make him stand up and walk. But he took the words of Jesus Christ. Obviously, Jesus's words were enough for him that he realized that, okay, this guy isn't just playing a joke on me. So he gets up and he walks. Through no faith of his own, he didn't come to Jesus asking to be healed. Jesus came to him and asked him, will you be made whole? He didn't ask him if he had faith. He just asked him if he wanted to be healed. Who in the right mind wouldn't like that, Sam?
Well, he might have not had faith in Jesus, but he had faith in the words of Jesus. Or he
Exactly.
on what Jesus said.
And that is important, I think, because as you realize that Jesus Christ doesn't only come for those that seek him, he actually goes, and that's what I wanted to get at, is Jesus actually goes and seeks those who don't even know that he needs them. This man had no idea that, and this is just me, so I could be wrong here, but I don't think this man knew that Jesus Christ was Jesus Christ. And just because of the rest of the passage where it's already mentioned, where he says, I don't know who it was. All he did was he said, rise up and walk and take your bed. If I'm going to be healed and I'm going to be walking, I'm going to do what he says. Right? And that's what Jesus Christ did, is he took this man who was totally destitute, relying on somebody else for 38 years, gave him the ability to walk, gave him the ability to take up his bed, even though it was against the law.
I wonder So this man was there 38 years. When Jesus said that, his body was healed. So he would have known immediately that his body wasn't the same, that he felt something. So, when he told him to do that, he felt his body change and he had the ability to stand up and walk. It's not that he had a question and so. I'll quit there for now.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm running out of time. I figured I wasn't sure how this lesson would go. I thought maybe I would have extra time, but that never happens, it seems like. So what I want to get at though is the latter part of here. I'm going to let the man with him being healed, I'm going to let that go. Moving on to the next part. Verses
Before you
10.
do that,
Go ahead.
what does Jesus say? Behold, thou art made whole, verse 14, sin no more, lest the worst thing come upon thee. So was this sickness, was this impotence a result of sin in his life?
It is.
The way it reads is that what he had done, so was he doing something? Fell, was he a thief? Was he running? Fell and broke his leg, and his leg was never healed. You know, you could put any scenario in there. But why did Jesus? That to me has always captured my attention. He says, "Go and sin no more." That's the thing. Worst thing come unto thee. So was there a relation in his being there for 38 years because of his sin? Had he repented of the sin and didn't have healing? There's so much that is in there. Jesus cared for a person that was in sin and doesn't want him to go back into sin. And that's so important for us. We were born into sin. We've been saved from sin. We're not supposed to go back and continue in sin that grace may abound. Paul talks about in Romans. So it's that to me is a part of the lesson that really jumps out at me is that Jesus doesn't don't go back into sin or something worse will come. And that is so true. You see a person that is brought out of sin and they go back into sin, oftentimes they go deeper into sin than what they were before. That's a real good caution for us.
One thing is that I was studying that did come up with that. It could have been what you mentioned, but it could also been if you were 38 years sick and confined to a certain place, and now all of a sudden you had this freedom to move, to go and do whatever you wanted to do. Jesus was giving him the caution that you've been restrained for so many years to this certain place, and you couldn't do a thing. Now you have the freedom to go, but with that freedom then becomes the ability to sin. Whereas before he couldn't go to places where there was sinning because he was confined. He would have to have someone physically carry him. So there's that part as well. The flip side. So the Jews, I'm going to try to wrap up here about the Sabbath. The Jews had taken the Sabbath and they had taken it and they had revoked it. They had added to it. They had made so many rules. It was said that, this sounds so silly, but if they had a needle in their clothes, carrying a needle on the Sabbath was against the law, even if you didn't know it was there. So if you were mending your clothes on Saturday for Sunday and you forgot the needle in the clothes, that was against the law because you were carrying your burden, a needle. So that's how far they had taken it. For this man to take his bed, and typically when you think of a bed, we think of a mattress and all that. Yeah, who's going to carry a bed? Well, that's not how the case was in there. It was basically a roll that about 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick. You could roll up and tie it and put it on your back and you could carry it. So it's nothing really extremely heavy, but it's still a bed. And Jesus had taken this man, he had healed him, said, take your bed and walk, which Passover, tons of people, obviously people noticed. It was big enough that people noticed that he was carrying the bed. So who was it that reported him? Was it the Jews themselves? Was it the Sadducees? It doesn't really say, but the Jews therefore said unto him to cure. So obviously it's enough to realize the Jews realized that this was against the law. It was very obvious. They asked him, why? He made me whole. Same said to me, take my bed and walk. And then they asked him again, what man is that? And he goes, I don't know. I don't know who it was. There's something else in here as that you probably, maybe you noticed it before, but what does it say there in verse 13? For Jesus had conveyed himself away, a multitude being in that place. John records this four times in his gospel where Jesus conveyed himself away or removed himself from the presence. What does that mean? Does that mean that we could say that he made himself invisible? We could say that he lifted himself above the crowd and took himself away. We could say maybe he disguised himself. What does that show? When you see what is John portraying here? Any ideas?
Well, I see humility of Jesus Christ, not taking like the glory for what was done, wanting to point him to the Father, to God instead of to himself.
That would be one way to look at it, but what about a miracle in a miracle? Or another miracle within a miracle? Did Jesus have the capability to remove himself from a place physically the way, unlike a physical person, an actual person could do? I guess my question is, was Jesus still God? I think he was. Did Christ remove himself from this circumstance by magic or by making himself move? I don't know. It just seems to me like John making note of it, he conveyed himself away. I think that is what the case is here. I could be wrong, but it just seems to me like with the multitude that it was, Jesus removed himself from this circumstance here. I have the feeling that this man, he rose up and walked, took up his bed, and all of a sudden you have a whole pile of people around him, and Jesus is nowhere around. And then a little bit later, 14, I want to get to this here. Afterward, Jesus finds him in the temple. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's the same day. It doesn't mean when it is, because this was a week-long celebration. Behold, thou art made whole. Sin no more, lest the worst thing come to me. The man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus which had made him whole. So, as this man was healed, he was told by Jesus to go and sin no more. He met with Jesus. Jesus, and this is, Alice, this is where I was getting at with, when I'm reading this here, this is where I'm getting at, where I don't think he knew who Jesus was, because he said when he finds him, when verse 15, the man departed and then told the Jews that it was Jesus. He didn't know who it was at first that had saved him from his infirmities, but he knew now, and he was willing to tell people that were asking him who it was. He knew that he was Jesus, and it made Jesus a bad guy in the Jews' eyes. Why did this young man, how did this man get to the temple? This was referred to at the very beginning of the lesson. Someone want to get for me Psalms 116, 18 to 19. If you want to look at some references as far as Jesus healing on the Sabbath and stuff, and realize why both Matthew and Luke give references to him healing on the Sabbath. Matthew 12:6-11, Luke 6:9, and Luke 14:5 is all references to Jesus healing on the Sabbath and kind of going against the Jews and what they wanted. It shows that Jesus Christ is Lord of the Sabbath. He is not wanting that things should not be taken care of on the Sabbath. Psalms 116 verses 18 and 19. Someone read that, please.
I will pay my vows unto the Lord now in the presence of all his people, in the courts of the Lord's house, in the midst of thee, O Jerusalem, praise you the Lord.
But here's Psalms. This man who'd been healed, the first thing he does is he goes to the temple. And there's two reasons why he would have gone to the temple. One, because he would have wanted to. And the other would have been so that the priest could then claim him to be clean. Like was already mentioned, he couldn't go to the temple because he had an infirmity. He couldn't get there physically. And then when he was able to go, he went there to be able to be told he was clean, that he was clean every whit, and that he could rejoice and he could worship. It's made a sense of him wanting to worship God and to bring himself back to worshiping as he was taught to do. In the references that I gave about in Matthew there and Luke, Jesus made mention in them passages, and what I want to leave you with is that if there's something that needs to be done, if you see a sheep in a ditch on the Sabbath, are you going to help it out? He asked in one of them references. And basically Jesus was saying the law made provision for that you could help. Do we stop and change a flat tire on our car on a Sunday? Well, I guess if you want to get to your destination, you're going to. Or are you just going to sit there in the car and wait for Sunday to be over and wait for Monday morning to change your flat tire? No, you're going to change your flat tire then. Do we stop and help people on Sundays that have a flat tire or that are broke down? I think we should. Jesus here was saying, I think it was a portrayal here that he had control of the Sabbath to be able to heal, to be able to do good, to be able to take care of the needs of people around us. And I think that we can do the same thing with Sabbath. We can look at it as just any other day. And I heard this a couple times this past couple months about working on the Sunday, and that they're always available to work. And I don't think that's right. I think we need to take a break. I think we need to respect the Sabbath. Oh yeah, there are still things that need to be done on a Sabbath if you're a farmer and stuff like that. The animals need to eat just the same as we do. There's things that you have to do. But at the same time, I think that we can schedule our business in such a way that brings honor and glory to God in the way that we do what we do and how we do it. Jesus Christ was Lord of the Sabbath, but we're not Jesus. So I think we need to respect that. He healed this man, something that he was not looking for, something that he was hoping for, but he had no anticipation of getting healed when he expected it. And Jesus Christ came and healed him. He looked him up. He lifted him up. He healed him. And then he sent him on his way, worshiping and praising God, because he realized that it was Jesus who had saved him, not only from his physical body, but from his sin as well. Because Jesus told him then to go and sin no more. I've healed you, and I want you to live that way. Thank you.